What was that? What was that? That was not. What was that? What happened? How is that? That was supposed to be something. What was that? It was supposed to be this. The following program serves as a reminder that only you can prevent forest fires. And by you, we are obviously referring exclusively to Gavin Newsom. Schmuck. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Lawgic. Before it's too late, to all you Native Americans, commonly referred to as Indians. Yeah, I said it. To all you Americans who are here since birth, Americans since birth, all you anchor babies, all you naturalized Americans, and heck, it's Independence Day. Even to your green card visitors, I say to you, Happy Independence Day. I hope that today and this entire Independence Day weekend forthcoming is one that you find to be spectacularly enjoyable, filled with fireworks, barbecues, apple pie, hot dogs, and all the other amazing things that make our American culture chef's kiss and so deliciously American. And to all other people who are squatting in our country, I say to you, go to hell. We don't want you here. I'm just saying. Everyone else, happy 4th. Happy 4th. All you people, all you folks who are here legally, happy Independence Day. Well, there you go. I think that I got that off my chest. I'm not sure if there's really much more left to say. I'm not sure. I'll have to introduce someone here who can express themselves in ways that far outstrip my own ability to express myself. This fine example of speaking ability, someone who can explain things in ways that few mere mortals dare try, unless their 9th grader is presenting a book report. And by that, of course, I'm referring to the second lady, who's married to the person that we ironically refer to as the second man or the 42nd man, depending on how you look at it. The second lady and the 42nd man. Let's listen to her explain to us about NASA.
Which brings me to May 30th, 2020. Bob and Doug returned to the Kennedy Space Center. They suited up, they waved to their families, and they rode an elevator up nearly 20 stories. They strapped in to their seats and waited as the tanks beneath them filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And then they launched. Yeah, they did. Which brings me
to... I think she's been lobotomized. I think she's been lobotomized. That's how 9th graders tell over book reports. That's how she talks to. They launched. She thinks it's so good. Let's get more from our potential new replacement for Joe Biden. potential new replacement for Joe Biden. Let's hear more from her thoughts about what's going on in the world.
Down in layman's terms for people who don't understand what's going on and how can this directly affect the people of the United States.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia.
We campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P. The plan.
Do you plan to visit the border?
Not today, but I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
I've said I'm going to go to the border, and
When are you going to the border, Vice President?
the administration has asked. I'm not finished.
We've been to the border. So
I'm speaking.
this whole thing about the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
And I'm being clear with you right now.
Yes, okay.
And so if you're interested, I'll continue to be clear. There are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't, there's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. We are doing it.
But should we have done it sooner?
We are doing it.
What do you see as the biggest national security challenge confronting the U.S.? What is the thing that worries you and keeps you up at night?
Frankly, one of them is our democracy.
You don't feel misused or underused?
No, I don't.
When folks vote, they order what they want, and in this case, they got what they asked for. I went off script a little bit.
So there you go. That's like a commercial right there. You can decide for yourself who it's a commercial for. Lord. Well, perhaps after reviewing a video like that, it motivated Joe Biden to weigh in and say definitively, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Biden says, I'm not going anywhere as calls to quit the race grow. Trust me, he's not going anywhere. He's really not going anywhere. We've seen you try to get off a platform that's 3 inches off the ground. You're not going anywhere. We've seen your polls. You're not going anywhere. Washington, President Joe Biden said, I'm not going anywhere, as he thought he was shuffling his feet, and yet somehow didn't manage to get any further across the room. Sorry, he said, I'm not going anywhere as he faced calls by many Democrats to end his re-election bid using the 4th of July celebration on Thursday to hit back at doubts about his stamina and mental acuity to continue his campaign. I don't know why anyone would think this guy is lacking in mental acuity. Look at him just today on July 4th. Yeah, this was today on July 4th.
Happy Independence.
Introduced by the Queen of Cackle herself, Kamala Harris, introducing the leader of the free world tonight. And this is what he had to say.
And we give thanks to our commander-in-chief, the president of the...
The vice? What were we going to say? What was she saying there?
The president of the United States, the extraordinary president of the United States, Joe Biden!
Ho, ho, ho!
He looks like death. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, let's one more time.
Ho! Ho, ho, ho! Happy Independence Day.
So this has caused people to speculate. Is it that he was being nasty to Kamala, calling her names? Does he think it's Christmas? Does he think people say ho, ho, ho on July 4th? And again, he's standing next to his doctor, Dr. Jill Biden. So you have Mr. Death over here, like living corpse, next to Dr. Jill Biden, the who's almost certainly going to be charged with elder abuse soon. The Queen of Cackle, second woman, and the 42nd man. It's a winter lineup. It's a winter lineup this 4th of July for those of you who are interested in catching the Bidens there, and undoubtedly the 60 people who managed to come together to watch them. It's far better than he was doing during his campaign, so that's not bad. What's just happy birthday, you colony traitors? I'm now in a socialist country. You should have come. You should have come. Don't come. I'm gonna come. Sorry, that was a Kamala Trump meme. Smokey the Trump bear to stop forest fires. Oh, that's not bad. Kamala went on the border of Mexico restaurant and thinks that's the border. Oh, on the border Mexican restaurant thinks that's the border we're talking about. Probably. Wouldn't be surprised. Joe, will you join forces with Robert Gouveia and bring out a tracksuit and polo shirt line? Oh, is he bringing out a polo shirt line? Is that coming? Is that coming, the polo shirts? Yeah. Trust me, if I was chiseled like a rock, I'd wear ridiculously tight polo shirts too. That dude it looks like a machine. He looks like it's like I don't know, it's like the Bionic Man. Seriously, so cut. And yeah, I'm not gonna kid you. I wish I was cut like him. Unbelievable. I didn't know that the polo shirt was like a topic on his show, but it is common power for him. Thank you, Brian. Given her record, I see why Harris wants to be unburdened by what she has been. You know, I'm so glad you brought this up. First of all, it's much nicer than this. That's not nice. But second of all, you brought up about how you can see what we can be unburdened by what we were. Or, well, let's see. I found this just moments before I started my show, and I thought you all would appreciate it.
I wish none of this had happened. So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is to imagine what can be, unburdened by what has been. Which is why we will work together, Frodo Baggins, and continue to work together to address these issues, to tackle these challenges, and to work together to continue to work, operating from the new norms, rules, and agreements that we will convene to work together on. And I know that we will work on this together, Frodo Baggins. Now, have I ever told you about the significance of the passage of time? I wish none of this had happened.
That is so good. That is so good. That is so good. You might be wondering what that reference is. Well, in case you are.
Doing a tour of the library here. The governor and I, and we were all doing a tour of the library here and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
Next president of the United States.
On November 8th, 2020.
We want that. Right there. So, Washington Post reported we're paying Panama to deport people. We hit such a level of stupid, we're paying to bring people in and paying other countries to deport. Yep, that sounds about right. rather unbreaded. So, with that, I think it's time for us to get. I want to get to. But anyway, I was just pointing out that Biden says he's not going anywhere. The 81-year-old Democrat's shaky showing at a June 27 debate with Donald Trump. His every appearance is now closely scrutinized. Many Democratic voters are worried about whether he can keep up a grueling pace of work for the next 4.5 years, and some in his party have urged him to step aside. Biden was hosting the annual U.S. Independence Day festivities at the White House on Thursday, including a barbecue for a few thousand active duty military service members and their families. Biden, in a suit with no necktie, began his remarks with a forceful ho, ho, ho! Happy Independence Day. See, Reuters left out the ho, ho, ho. Reading from a teleprompter, Biden made no major errors. This is what I considered a massive win for him. No major errors. Oh my God. Reading from a teleprompter, Biden made no major errors in delivering brief remarks, but at one point appeared to go off script to make reference to a war cemetery that Trump declined to visit while in office. By the way, you know, I was in that World War I. Oh, cemetery. Visiting some people. I remember falling in France. The one of our colleagues, a former president, didn't want to go to. He said, his voice dropping to a low volume and trailing off, undoubtedly thinking about Farina. I probably shouldn't have said anyway, Biden added before continuing his remarks. As Biden mingled and took selfies with guests, someone called out for him to keep up the fight. You got me, man. I'm not going anywhere, Biden said, repeating his pledge to remain in the race for as long as possible, despite the growing calls to step aside. You see, the reason you watch with me is because I give you the editorializations so you can better understand what these articles are actually saying. Abigail Disney, nothing to do with anything Joe was just talking about. But, says granddaughter Walt Disney, who founded the company that bears his name and who has been a major Democratic donor, surprise, surprise, became the latest donor to call for Biden to withdraw from the presidential election, telling CNBC on Thursday that she will halt donations to the Democratic Party until he does so. Vice President Kamala Harris is the leading contender to take his place in the November 5th election if Biden were to drop out, sources have said, though his allies believe he can assuage the concerns of voters and donors, obviously. Among the events on Biden's calendar being closely scrutinized is an interview with ABC News on Friday that will be aired in full at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. He also travels to Wisconsin the same day for a campaign rally. One moment. Sorry, I'm just waiting for news on something here. And making sure. All right. Biden faces a new reality since last week's debate. Even if he doesn't falter verbally or physically, serious concerns about his viability as a candidate are likely to linger. If he mangles words, looks unfocused or confused, everyone will know it's him and not a body double. But that also means he'll face renewed pressures to depart. If reelected, Biden would be 86 at the end of his second term. But we really need to measure him in dog years because he looks as if he's 602 years old. He's being asked by some former supporters to step aside, preserve his legacy, whatever that may be, and lessen the chances of a second Trump presidency, assuming that actually would help. With just 4 months to go before the election, a decision needs to be made soon, they say. Democrats, including top allies, have left the door open to having Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket. So I'll be bringing you more and more clips of Kamala Harris that we never lose sight of to exactly who and what she is, because I think that it's important for the people to be on top of these things. All right. And with that, I think it's time for us to turn our attention to one of my favorite attorneys on the planet, a man who provides far more fodder for me to cover than almost any other attorney, perhaps any 2 or 3 other attorneys out there. And that, of course, is this man right here, Legal Eagle. He has a lot he needs to complain about. As you can see, just from the get-go, he's not in a good mood. You can see it in his eyes. He's not happy. He's very not happy. He's going to try and grin and chuckle through it. You can rest assured he will. He's very not happy. Now, you see this little marker over here on my line? This is right here. That's about how far I made it through so far. So I only made it like 2 minutes and 48 seconds out of 25 minutes. So I'm warning you, YouTube, if he ends up screaming, saying things that are off color and things like that, please do not hold that against me, because I haven't had a chance to review this yet. I'm trusting, seeing as how frequently he gets thrust into people's algorithms, that I can rely that despite the fact that he's probably pretty freaked out about this decision, that he's not going to start cussing like a sailor. Let's see if he actually understands how the immunity works and its full ramifications as it relates to President Trump. Before we get there, let me cover this. You're very welcome, Brian. Happy 4th, brother. It's patriots like you that secure the inside quiz custodiate ipsos custodes. Who watches the watchman? We do. There you go. That's probably key, right? Key custodiate quiz? I'm not sure. Cami is the perfect reparations candidate. The elites already have their silos and arcs, but they need her to start World War III and prevent the election. I don't see how she's going to make it. But let's hear from Legal Eagle and his thoughts about this week's decision from the Supreme Court about presidential immunity.
However bad you think it is, it's worse. Remember when Trump's lawyers argued that he could SEAL Team 6's political rivals, and we all laughed because that's a preposterous thing for anyone to argue, and absolutely no serious person could possibly believe that the Constitution or the laws of this country would allow that to be the rule.
I mean, you can sort of figure he'd probably be impeached, right? I mean, he'd probably be impeached. So maybe it wouldn't even be relevant.
Well, the Supreme Court just said, hold my beer while I assassinate my political rivals.
The president is entitled for total personal gain to use the trappings of his office. That's what you're trying to get us to hold.
Yes, the Supreme Court has effectively given law-breaking presidents and...
Not trappings of his office. That's a very broad term. Use the constitutional powers that have been entrusted to him.
We're not singling any one law-breaking president out or anything. Could be any felonious president.
He's not going to be felonious for long. He ain't going to be felonious for long. Get them all out now. Get them all out now, Devin. Get them all out. He ain't going to be felonious for very long.
Almost absolute immunity from criminal prosecution. And where the court did not grant outright absolute immunity, it gave presumptive immunity and procedural protections that might as well have been absolute immunity.
The procedural protections are very important because they say you can't even talk about this for the context. If he has immunity, you can't even talk about anything that happens there. You can see how upset he is. Look how upset he is. I just anytime I pause him, he looks like he's losing it.
And while unofficial acts of the president still receive no immunity, the crap cherry on top of this crap sundae is that even though a president now has immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts as president, a prosecutor cannot even use official acts as evidence in a prosecution over unofficial acts, which makes prosecution of some unofficial acts virtually impossible.
Ruh-roh. Ruh-roh. So wait, you mean we can't go into some sort of spiral cycle of vindictive prosecutions, depending on who the last president was? Oh, the horror. The horror.
Whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, this is a terrible decision for democracy.
No. Your position is a terrible position for anyone who thinks we have a democracy, because we don't. We never have. But your position here is a bizarre position for anyone who believes that they want to have a democracy or a constitutional republic that's actually going to be healthy.
Possibly a top 5 worst Supreme Court decision of all time.
That was the line. That was the line. Possibly top 5 worst decision of all time. Understand this. We had Dred Scott, Korematsu, Plessy v. Ferguson, Roe v. Wade, and you're putting this top 5 worst decisions of all time. I'm wondering what your yardstick is. What's your yardstick there? Legal? What's your yardstick? Is it based on lack of judicial reasoning, poorly written, or you don't like the policy that results from what the law says? That's what I'm really curious about. Because when it comes to Roe v. Wade, I had issues with every part of that. That's why it's one of the worst decisions. Dred Scott was way up there. So was Korematsu. Those are stains in our history we'll never wash away.
Happy July 4th, everyone. But just how bad is it? Well, don't take my word for it. Justice Sotomayor says, quote,
he's quoting Sotomayor. This lets you know. This lets you know the level of depth that he's providing his audience. Quoting Sotomayor. Okay.
The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding.
No, not upsetting. Recognizing the status quo that has existed around the president since our founding.
This new official acts immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interests of the nation.
It's always been that way. Always been that way. Always.
The president of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way, under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution.
Because we also give very strong powers to the states to prosecute. And we also have this infiltration of political prosecutions, which would destroy our country if left unchecked. If ever there was a time that there was a need to recognize presidential immunity, now is the time. Now. This is it. This was it. If they didn't do it now, we would have gone into this spin cycle of vindictive, persecutive prosecutions. That's where we were headed until what we saw this past July 1st.
Orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune.
No, that's not true.
Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune.
I'm sure that's happened a lot, sadly. Sadly, I'm sure that's happened a lot. I think it's wrong, but it's almost certainly happened a lot. Probably for more than a century now.
Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends. Because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he might not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. That is the majority's message today. Justice Sotomayor concludes that the opinion marked a sea change in the relationship between the people and the president. Quote,
no, it's always been. Why do you think that no one's ever been prosecuted before? Why do you think there was no prosecution of Obama when the guy literally drone struck an American? Nor should there have been. Nor should there have been. Because we do need a president to take bold and decisive steps without worrying about political prosecutions that will result therefrom.
In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law.
Well, that's since DACA decision also. But
But how did we get here? Well, until now, executive immunity was a court-created doctrine that shields presidents from most civil lawsuits involving conduct that occurred during their presidential terms. There's no explicit constitutional text granting the president immunity.
It's just really evident from the impeachment clause.
But in Nixon versus Fitzgerald, the Supreme Court ruled that a president is entitled to absolute immunity from legal liability for civil damages based on his official acts, including acts on the outer perimeter of his duties.
So we'll see if he explains that, Nixon v. Fitzgerald. But the point is that it gives insulation from civil suit. That was a situation where a law had been passed that resulted in Fitzgerald purportedly being laid off, and he says wrongfully. Now, I don't know enough about the facts to tell you whether or not it was wrongful, but he held Nixon accountable for that law. And we said, no, you cannot hold him civilly liable for anything. If you can't hold him civilly liable for performing his duties, what sense would there be to hold him criminally liable? But let's see what Legal Eagle can weigh in on this.
The court defined the president's official duties quite broadly to prevent future presidents from being sued for, quote, virtually every allegation that an action was unlawful or was taken for a forbidden purpose. The court explained that it was, quote, settled law that the separation of powers doctrine does not bar every exercise of jurisdiction over the president of the United States. To determine whether a particular type of suit against a president or a former president could be heard, a court must balance the constitutional weight of the interest to be served against the dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch. Indeed, in Clinton versus Jones,
notice what they say there. It's like you're just running through the words. Am I playing this at fast speed? I don't think I am. No. He's talking so fast. I think that he's afraid that some of his viewers may understand just how logically sound the majority's decision is and consistent with Supreme Court precedent.
Quote, virtually every allegation that an action was unlawful or was taken for a forbidden purpose.
If we allowed you to sue him, everything he does, he would be sued for. How the hell can he act in that context, in that setting? Mega Mob asks, the witch Whitmer went to D.C. instead of going to a Michigan deputy's funeral. I cannot express my extreme anger toward that freaking witch, but Whitmer needs to go away. I wanted to be more explicit, but YouTube. Sorry about that. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Do you think she's going to D.C. to like engage in roundtable talks about what to do about the Biden situation? That they're all, because I pictured them huddled around a table right this second, a conference room of the elites of the elite of the Democratic Party, literally like, what do we do? What's the plan? What did he say during that meeting? Who pushed him? Why is he unwilling to step down? Who would be, and I'm sure they have different thoughts as to who they want to replace. What will we do with Kamala? How would we deal with that situation? Is he willing to consider even stepping down? Has Barack spoken to him? All these different things that you can imagine the powerful Democrat elites conversing about. Because one of the things I was trying to express yesterday when I was on Spaces is Democrats do not have an agenda of this is what's right or this. They simply, their modus operandi that has always been for this party, always been. It's not that we're going to actually care about what truth is. We're only going to worry about what is true in the court of public opinion. What do they like? What do they respect? You may recall that when they had the whole issue with respect to the impeachments, they conducted polls to try to figure out what would the American people most likely identify with as being a terrible crime. I don't remember if it was the first impeachment or the second one, but like I think when they were trying to talk about like how do we label this? You know, do we call it that he's threatening him? Do we call like how do we couch this? And the way they came to their conclusions, and I think with respect to the term insurrection, they sent out like market research teams to figure out which word is going to resonate most effectively with their base. So when they're sitting there in these meetings, I am sure they're talking about their with their marketing experts and what initial polling results reveal with respect to, okay, how badly will we be killed if we shunt Kamala to the side? Is that going to lose us the entire, what percentage of the black women vote are we going to lose? Is that ameliorated if we put in a black candidate instead? How badly how important is name recognition? They were talking about on the Twitter spaces some I think a black mayor named Wes Moore. Maybe he's maybe he's a governor. I don't know anything about him. The Democrats all knew about him, that he's their new rising star, some young black man who they have they're willing to put a world of confidence in. I'm talking about whether he could be a Biden replacement. And I was making the point on the space that Barack Obama came out of nowhere, but it was not boom, presto, zingo, this is the guy. He gave a speech 4 years earlier, which basically made the Democratic Party go nuts with excitement. And that was building for years. They started talking in Democrat circles about Barack Obama. And then he had the blessing that he became the first politician to recognize the power, magnitude, and significance of social media. And he's the first political candidate to ever go viral in a positive way. So there's this entire confluence of events that enabled Barack Obama to surge the way he did. And it was a very organic thing that was very well planned and planned to be seeping into the conscience of the American culture in a developing swell. But all of a sudden just be like, hey, here's Wes Moore, we're all voting for him, that you think you're going to just gin up 50 million votes. I think it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. But who knows? Who knows? The response I got was, well, he has the advantage that he's running against Trump, and Trump has built-in hatred against him. Okay, I guess that's sort of true. But I think the more significant advantage is a printing machine and access to ballots. The Philip DeFranco of lawyers. Oh, that's illegally. Nothing says deep thought more than wearing a jacket made from a horseplay. Wait, I can't sell pardons? Yeah, seriously. How many pardons did he sell? Was the guy Rich Hill? Was that the guy? Something, Mark Rich? I don't remember. If there's a military coup d'etat in the U.S. presidential media, would be the last of our problems. It's true. It's true.
The court explained that it was, quote, settled law that the separation of powers doctrine does not bar every exercise of jurisdiction.
Oh, you should be watching too.
Over the president of the United States. To determine whether a particular type of suit against a president or former president could be heard, a court must balance the constitutional weight of the interest to be served against the dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch.
And that's exactly what they said here. That's exactly what they said now.
Indeed, in Clinton versus Jones, the Supreme Court found that under that rubric, the president does not have immunity from civil suits for conduct before they became president. So until now, virtually every lawyer and judge in the country assumed that while executive immunity would shield civil lawsuits because the president could be sued by almost anyone in the country over almost anything, that criminal prosecutions would be different.
Wrong. Listen, what a presumptuous statement. I didn't know anyone who thought what he thought. Every lawyer I ever spoke to assumed there was immunity from criminal prosecution. Everyone I don't know what you're talking about here. Virtually every lawyer, that's a joke. That's a joke.
Every lawyer and judge in the country assumed that while executive immunity would shield civil lawsuits.
Why would it shield only civil lawsuits? What is even the logic? What's the thought process where you're like, oh yeah, civil lawsuits we're going to shield him from, but not criminal liability? Obviously we can go after him. Why? Why would that be? What is even the argument?
It's because the president could be sued by almost anyone in the country over almost anything.
And he could also be brought for charges by any prosecutor for almost anything. Look at Alvin Bragg.
That criminal prosecutions would be different. Why? Because it's way more important that a president be bound by criminal law and not commit heinous criminal acts, even in service of their duties. Plus, there are way more safeguards against criminal prosecution than civil suits.
Are there?
But Trump moved to...
Are there? Why? Why? If you're in a certain jurisdiction, you know that the political outcome is going to far outweigh anything else. Case in point, a jury in New York, which heard an admitted perjurer lie to them, not just hear how he was a liar, be exposed that he had lied to them, and still, despite being the key witness, convicting Trump 34 times of a crime that nobody knows what it was. If you ever had to have a concern that politically motivated criminal prosecutions are a real threat to our democracy, New York proved that that threat is a grave, grave reality.
Dismiss his DC prosecution on immunity grounds. He lost at the trial court and appealed the decision. Judge Tanya Chutkin stayed the criminal proceedings pending the outcome of the appeal. The DC Circuit upheld the lower court's ruling that, quote, former President Trump has become Citizen Trump with all the defenses of any other criminal defendant. But any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president...
Look how fast he's reading. He's doing this so fast. He's so angry.
No longer protects him against this prosecution. The Circuit Court ruled that presidents are not above the law. Quote, the president has a constitutionally mandated duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. As part of this duty, the president is responsible for investigating and prosecuting criminal violations. It would be a striking paradox if the president, who alone is vested with the constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, were the sole officer capable of defying those laws with impunity. The Circuit Court's decision was widely praised as a well-constructed opinion.
Okay. I guess in the circles I guess in the circles that you tend to maintain as your habitat.
That came to the only logical conclusion.
No, it's not the only logical conclusion. It was actually a fairly illogical conclusion.
But then it arrived in the Supreme Court. The top-line ruling from the majority of the Supreme Court is this. Presidents cannot be indicted based on conduct for which they are immune from prosecution. Based on the standard that this opinion creates, which we'll talk about in a second, Justice Roberts, writing for the six-justice majority, kicked things back down to the trial court. Quote, on remand, the district court must carefully analyze the indictment's remaining allegations to determine whether they, too, involve conduct for which a president must be immune from prosecution. And the parties and the district court must ensure that sufficient allegations support the indictment's charges without such conduct. And the opinion starts with the premise that presidents have lots of power, powers they wield exclusively and do not share with Congress. The court describes the president's core powers as taking care that the laws are faithfully executed, commanding the military and dismissing officers he has appointed, and pardoning people who have committed crimes. So the court created three buckets: core official acts, non-core official acts, and unofficial acts. But as you'll see, there's very little difference between the official acts, and very little will qualify as an unofficial act.
That's not really true. That's really not true. But let's see how he interprets it. Because core acts are acts that are exclusively and preclusively his domain, that Congress has no business in that area. The judiciary has no business in that area. That's how it qualifies as a core act that is granted automatic immunity that's impenetrable, as opposed to presumptive immunity for all the other stuff that he does as part of his role as president.
And the court states, quote, we conclude that under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office. At least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers, this immunity must be absolute. As for his remaining official acts, he is also entitled to immunity. At the current stage of proceedings in this case, however, we need not and do not decide whether that immunity must be absolute or instead whether a presumptive immunity is sufficient. So with respect to the exercise of core powers, the president is apparently absolutely immune from any criminal prosecution related to using those powers. And the court goes on to note that in cases involving Richard Nixon and Aaron Burr, judges recognize that the president has a presumptive privilege to withhold certain papers and communications. Though oddly, in both of those cases, Presidents Nixon and Jefferson were compelled to produce records and recordings because of the public interest in those records was strong enough to overcome the presumptive privilege. However, the court sees the Trump case differently because Trump is the subject of a criminal prosecution. Quote, criminally prosecuting a president.
Well, specifically what they said was that if you're asking him to turn over records, he would be subject to that. They admit that. They recognize that. They didn't change that at all. They're simply saying that criminal prosecution is different. Let's hear you continue.
For unofficial conduct undoubtedly poses a far greater threat of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch than simply seeking evidence in his possession, as in Burr and Nixon. The danger is akin to, indeed greater than, what led us to recognize absolute immunity from civil damages liability, that the president would be chilled from taking the bold and unhesitating action required of an independent executive. So the argument goes, if a president could face criminal prosecution for his official acts, including communications with his aides, he might be unable to perform his official duties because he fears prosecution. So the court concludes, quote, taking into account these competing considerations, we conclude that the separation of powers principles explicated in our precedent necessitates at least a presumptive immunity from criminal prosecution.
How would you be able to go into, how would you be able to conduct a strike if you have to be concerned that you're going to be criminally prosecuted for it? And maybe the intel's wrong, and you're going to be criminally prosecuted and have to defend yourself from that. You're like, all right, you know what? Maybe we're not going to engage in that drone strike. Like, how stupid is that? Is that in America's best interests? So dumb. I'm not going to send in SEAL Team 6 because I might get prosecuted for it. Is that better? That's a better way for a healthy democracy to operate.
Prosecution for a president's acts within the outer perimeter of his official responsibility. Such an immunity is required to safeguard the independence and effective functioning of the executive branch and to enable the president to carry out his constitutional duties without undue caution.
Do you think that that's not a necessary element? That's something you shouldn't even factor in, shouldn't consider?
But what you'll see is that the majority continually only looks to one side. They believe that presidents should be free, but what about the other side? Sure, there are reasons why we want a president to have the ability to take action.
There are reasons that we want him to be free to take action? Really? Really? What a novel concept. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Where's the but? Give me the but. But
we also have some...
there we go. There's the but. Damn good reasons
why we might want the president to hesitate, if not withhold action entirely when it comes to criminal violations.
Really? What about the fact that we have prosecutors who prosecute for nothing if they don't like the guy?
And the majority just simply doesn't address the other side. So the majority sets up a paradigm that first examines whether the conduct involved one of the president's.
So he's bringing good law, our good law. This guy, totally Ryan Goodman here, was stealing my name here with his whole good law. I don't know what the hell's going on. Obviously, it's not good Lawgic, but actually, I don't know who he is. Maybe he is. I'm looking at his face, and I'm not encouraged that that I need worry about having association with him. That I need not worry about having association with him. I'm a little concerned. Our good law. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the Supreme Court ruling. We created this infographic to explain the pathways open to Jack Smith. Oh, I'm not liking this. I'm not liking this.
Core powers. If it does, the president is absolutely immune from criminal prosecution. If it does not implicate a core power, then the courts have to decide whether the president's acts are official or unofficial.
Wait, let's look at that graphic more. I want to see that graphic. Okay, so it says type of conduct, official conduct versus unofficial conduct. If it's unofficial conduct, yes, prosecute. Examples, possibly false elector scheme, possibly. I agree, it's possible that is. It's possible it's not. It's possible it's not. I'm not sure that counts as an unofficial act. His objective was to ensure that the election results were proper. Here, let's look at it this way, okay? Let's just think for a second. Imagine we had the current system in place that we have now back in 1796. There's an election now between Adams and Jefferson. Washington has concerns about how the election in Georgia was conducted. and he's not even in the election, right? Sorry. So this is Adams. It's not Adams versus Jefferson. I don't remember who Adams beats. Anyway, the point being, the outgoing president now would engage in something that he says, hey, in order to help preserve this, we're going to create an alternate slate of electors. We can look at what happened with Nixon in 1960s in Hawaii, 1960. If the president was involved in that, you can argue that his objective was to ensure the integrity of the election. So I don't know what. So just because Trump happened to be the beneficiary of his own act, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily an action that was unofficial. If someone who is not the president decided they wanted to engage in this, would they be stepping in his toes? Does Congress have a right to do this? No. The judiciary have a right to do this? No. Is it their area of purview at all? No. I don't know. If we remove the fact for a moment that he was involved in the election and that it was electors supporting his re-election, would you say that that's conduct that is crazy for a president to be engaged in? I dare say definitely not. So I don't think that's an unofficial conduct. I think that's probably, based on the terms, that's official conduct in the outer ambit of presidential duties. That's how I would qualify it, personally. That's the false electors scheme. It's not a scheme. It's preserving an opportunity for the right to ensure that the electors votes are coming from the right electors. And then you have possibly the ellipse speech. I think they actually said the ellipse speech didn't seem like official. It seemed like it was in the outer boundary there. So I'm not sure if either of those qualifies unofficial conduct. Sorry to burst your bubble there, good law. Now, with respect to the official conduct, conclusive and preclusive core constitutional authority, then absolute immunity, yes. No prosecution, no use as evidence. And then what? If it's no, in that case, if it posed any dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch, then yes, then you can't use prosecution evidence. If no, then yes, prosecution, yes, uses evidence. Okay, that's true. Now, they said, example, possibly pressure on former Vice President Mike Pence, which that's what the court said. The court gave that as an example. So all the way down here at the bottom of their flow chart, where they say possibly pressure on former Vice President Mike Pence would be in something that would be presumptive immunity that might wash away if washing away that immunity will not pose any danger to the authority and function of the executive branch. And that would be the lower court's decision on that. It is a little complicated. I'm not going to argue. That is a little complicated, but it's a fairly decent job, other than the fact that I don't think his examples under unofficial conduct are necessarily really great examples. And he did do it just with TV instead of internet. Good to catch a stream from your GoDaddy brother. Oh, you're the British guy? Are you the wait, are you Wesley? Are you Wesley? Is that it? Wesley's the guy I spoke to. If so, welcome, my brother. If not, welcome, my brother. It's good either way. Of course, it's not illegal to have slates of alternates. Unless they're engaging, arguably they're engaging in fraud, which I think they're not. But Brooks Kelly says, my cousin is Kamala's foreign policy. My concern is Kamala's foreign policy understanding that the Ukraine is a country in Europe next to Russia may win over the where in the world is government. Wes Moore is my governor of Maryland. He's only been a governor since 2022, endorsed by Steny Hoyer. Need I say more? I don't know anything about Steny Hoyer, but Dem should announce a new season of Bad Girls Club. DC with Kamala Harris, Fannie Willis, Chelsea Handler, Nancy Pelosi, and Big Mike. You left out Mama Gretch. Big Mike. That's pretty funny. Mama Gretch. Legal Smeagol is still butthurt because he tried to sue Trump and lost. It's a rough life. And a rough life, too. Let the court of public opinion stipulate that you have a better beard, a much better beard and logic compared to legal dingleberry. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's also not legal. We've got this. Showering bombs on the enemy presidential act. Showering with your daughter unofficial act. Am I doing this right? Happy Independence Day, Patriots. Yeah, you see, that would be an unofficial act. That's a much clearer unofficial act. Certainly than the alternate electors.
Core powers. If it does, the president is absolutely immune from criminal prosecution. If it does not implicate a core power, then the courts have to decide whether the president's acts are official or unofficial. If it's an official act, the president is presumptively immune from prosecution. If it's an unofficial act, then the president is not immune. So how do we determine if the president's action is part of their core responsibilities or not? Well, we don't know. There's no standard in this opinion. They are apparently, according to this court, whatever powers the president has that are not shared with other branches of the government. But it's not like those powers are just listed in the Constitution. And other than the few...
Because they left it, which I didn't like the fact that they did leave it as broad as open to interpretation as possible, which they did. I thought that was punting. I thought it was a little bit of cowardice by the courts. They should have been more definitive on this very issue. But that is the logic that they employed, that they're supposed to be reviewing. And after courts engage in this test, they'll decide whether they're okay with it enough to let it stand.
Powers that were explicitly enumerated by this court, including removing people from office and commanding the military, we have no idea what might be considered a core power or not. But even those enumerated...
No, the core power are things that are not shared by anyone else. That would be a core power. But you're talking about whether something qualifies as an official act or an unofficial act. That's where he's confused here. Which, okay, look, this decision is not for the faint of mind, so it's easy to get confused. And perhaps he just misspoke, which is possible too. Maybe he does understand the decision better than I suspect. But that issue, what they left really open is that question as to where the presumption would be knocked away. That's completely open. That's completely open. But
core powers are terrifying.
But the core powers is actually pretty clear.
Because the court specifically said commanding the military. So if you take one thing away from this video, it's this. I'm likely going to take less than one thing, but he's going to want me to get this. Because commanding the military is apparently a core presidential power, and use of core presidential power is absolutely immune from criminal prosecution. Any use of the military by the president, including using the American military on American soil, is absolutely immune from criminal prosecution. And if you
using the military is his exclusive power, absolutely immune. Unless he gets impeached.
Take two things away, it should be that...
Right? Because if he gets impeached, then he can be criminally prosecuted. We're talking a situation where he wasn't impeached. I mean, if he gets impeached and convicted, you can go after him.
The president can do anything related to the DOJ.
I don't mean just impeached. I obviously mean the impeachment is confirmed by a 2/3 vote from the Senate. So if you get that, and presumptively, if someone went that rogue, you probably would get it.
Create sham investigations, sham prosecutions, fabricate evidence. They can do any...
What is this? You see, this is fear porn right here. That he's got like some hit list. And these are the people on his hit list. Why would Cori Bush? I don't know how they came up with these folks. You think he's worried about Bernie Sanders?
Of that, and they are absolutely immune because that's a core function. And a few really good commentators put it this way. The office of the president is like a gun. When you get elected president, you have an unfettered right to use that gun any way that you want to. Your motives and purposes for using that gun are completely irrelevant. You're the president, use the gun however you want. Criminal law does not apply to your use of that gun. And that is why multiple Supreme Court justices are concerned about a president SEAL Team 6ing their political rivals. But
you see, if he did do that, presumptively, he would be impeached, confirmed, and then convicted in a criminal court. They keep ignoring this obvious flaw in their fear porn, which is that he would most assuredly get convicted he'd be impeached, convicted by the Senate, and then prosecuted. So, yeah, in your crazy example that you want to come up with, God forbid the country ever got to that low a level, one would assume that would happen.
official acts are only presumptively immune. So how would a prosecutor overcome the presumption of immunity that comes with non-core official acts? Well, again, we have no idea. The court doesn't provide a standard. The only thing the court says is that, quote, at a minimum, the president must be immune from prosecution for an official act unless the government can show that applying a criminal prohibition to that act would pose no dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch.
That's the part which is really open. This I agree with. This part, that's really hard to understand what that means. I mean, what do you ask yourself? What do you think that means? So we're going to assume he is immune for these unofficial outer ambit of presidential duty acts, unless the government can show that it's okay for us to attach criminal prosecution to this act that he did in this outer area, because that's not going to have any impact or it's not going to have any danger of intruding on the authority and functions of the next president. It's tough. It's tough. Because obviously the president defense would be like, oh my gosh, if you do this here, if you allow them to come after me for talking to Mike Pence, then no president's going to feel comfortable just talking to a vice president about things they need to talk about. It's tough. It's very, very tough. I didn't like the fact that the court left that so hard to really understand.
This is barely a limit. There's almost no reason to distinguish between core and non-core official acts if there's no limit on what can be an official act that receives immunity. This language is from the...
I don't know about that. It would be hard. It would be hard to prove, though. It would be.
The original Fitzgerald balancing test, but turned on its head. Instead of balancing the importance of the intrusion, the court simply says if there's any danger at all of intrusion, there is immunity that attaches to that action. As Justice Sotomayor said in her dissent, quote, no dangers, none at all. It is hard to imagine a criminal prosecution for a president's official acts that would pose no dangers of intrusion on presidential authority in the majority's eyes. Nor should that be the standard. Surely some intrusions on the executive may be justified by an overriding need to promote objectives within the constitutional authority of Congress. Other intrusions may be justified by the primary constitutional duty of the judicial branch to do justice in criminal prosecutions. According to the majority, however, any intrusion on executive...
He's not even explaining what he's saying here. He's literally just, I'm going to read them Sotomayor's dissent and scream and read it in an outraged tone. I don't know what the hell he's doing here. I don't know what he's doing. This is not, he's not informing his audience. All he's doing is reading Sotomayor's dissent and trying to hold this up as some sort of ideal of judicial insight and perspective.
Power is too much. When presumptive immunity is this conclusive, the majority's indecision as to whether official acts immunity must be absolute or whether instead presumptive immunity is sufficient hardly matters. Now, I've seen a few legal pundits say that this decision is no big deal because immunity only attaches absolutely for the exercise of core presidential powers, despite the fact that the military is almost certainly a core power and lets the president drone strike their rival. But it's okay because other official acts are only presumptively immune and therefore can be prosecuted. But based on this language, that's not the case. Given that the only official acts that can be prosecuted are ones where there is absolutely no danger of intrusion into the authority and functions of the executive branch, that category is vanishingly small. Worse, you can't look to the president's motives to determine whether the act was official or not.
Yep, that's true. You can't. You can't look to the motives. You want to know why? Because if you look to the motives, that's where it becomes political persecution, because you're always going to attach negative motives to your political adversary. When will they ever give the benefit of the doubt to Trump's motives? Everyone on the left thinks they understand his brain perfectly. They're sitting there. They hear the dog whistles. And none of his supporters actually hear, because they're reading into his motivations all the time. That's why you created this. You and your ilk created this, Legal Eagle, because you basically said, we know what Trump really means, even when it's completely the opposite of the words coming out of his mouth. So once you've been screaming this for literally the last 7 years, that you know his motivation, obviously you know better than anyone else. You know it's a dog whistle. You know that he actually, when he says we're going to march peacefully and patriotically, that is inciting insurrection. Because you know it's a dog whistle. So once you start running around like Chicken Little, screaming that the earth is coming to an end and that he's screaming for insurrection and motivating his supporters to go lynch and go bring up Mike Pence on the gallows, go hunt Nancy Pelosi like it's the most dangerous game, and you walk through the halls of the Capitol with a shotgun and the whole blow as she's like scampering away. AOC hiding there from all the crazy rednecks, the crazy unarmed rednecks there who are out to kill her. You all know when you're screaming that for so long, how the heck could they actually allow you, the political enemy, to have any power to say, oh, we're going to have a court of law. This court of law we're gonna leave it up to the jury to decide what his motivations were. Hell no. It's ridiculous. You proved how stupid that would be. You and your ilk, you dictated to the Supreme Court that they damn well better put that in. Otherwise, the worst motivations in the world will automatically be assumed and as if proven true beyond a reasonable doubt, as we saw in the 34 New York convictions. Everyone just assumes that they know what's going through Trump's mind based on the statements of an admitted perjurer who they know lied to them, that they know that his objective was to try and steal an election, even though he had been doing it for 25 years beforehand, the exact same non-disclosure agreements. But they know, but beyond a reasonable doubt. That's why they told the Supreme Court, oh, hell, you better make sure that motivation is taken out as a possible factor, because if it's left in there as a possible factor, in that case, everything we're writing now is meaningless, because it will just be completely vanished away. It's like, well, this is different because we know his motivations. We know what he's really thinking. Come on, it's Trump. We know what he's thinking. Jackasses like you dictated the necessity of striking mind reading out of the motivation or the opportunity for the court to engage in that sort of analysis. Good evening, good Lawgic and everyone. Happy 4th of July. Thank you kindly. His eyes too close together could indicate fetal alcohol syndrome. Might explain his twisted abilities to think midwit. Yeah. I think he's... Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to try and attach his motivations. Is this guy with Jimmy Neutron grew up to be a bad lawyer? Sorry, Dark. I'm not getting the reference, but I'm sure everyone else does. He has way more books than Joe. That's a green screen. I think. I'm pretty sure. You know how you know if it's a green screen or not? Is the ladder always in the exact same position? Is it always in the exact same position? Is it ever moved at all? Ever. So we see it's like right along the edge of this divider. So go through his videos, see if you ever see it in a different place, then you'll know if it's a green screen. Special operation military members have duty to disobey legal orders, and they take it very seriously. Yeah. So you're saying that the SEAL Team 6 hypothetical is stupid. Military is not absolute powers. The Congress declares war and appropriates funds. It's a good point, Winston. It's a good point. But he's the commander-in-chief, so... Morris Apple says presidents can temporarily deploy military but cannot declare war without Congress. There are bounds on what he can do with the military. They're coping. Yeah, I think there's definitely a cope. Darkborn says, as a retired sergeant, no person in the military would carry an unconstitutional order to assassinate a political opponent of the president. You have a duty to ignore unconstitutional illegal orders. Well, this is leftist screaming. But I appreciate your expertise and thank you for your service. Happy 4th of July, my brother. The reason why it's so confusing because this is an area being governed by mores, but the Democrats are breaking every more. Even more. USA would have been better staying in a British parliamentary system. USA is so split that it's never about what is right, but what is best for each side. How does a parliamentary system, are you saying because they have like the multiple parties and that whole spiel? In different seats? I think a parliamentary system would ruin federalism. Right? I mean, because how would states participate in a parliamentary system? I don't know how that would operate. Unless you subdivided each state into like a federalist type of thing. Maybe that would work. Meaning in a parliamentary system, so you have your global vote there. If a certain percentage go to this party versus that party versus the other party, so that allots how many seats the party gets. And they sort of have prioritized as to who's getting the first seats, who's number 1 on the list, and who's number 250 on the list. So yeah. I need to think that through as to how that would work with the Federalist Society. Only people willing to twist laws beyond all recognition could think these things. Every accusation is a breadcrumb trail to their own transgressions. If not their own transgressions, their own wishes and desires. Because we've been hearing a lot of people screaming, oh, you know, Biden would be completely immune if he went out and assassinated Trump. God forbid. 79% of MAGA wish we got the Trump Dems made up. The Trump Dems? Oh, 70 to 90% of MAGA wish that we got the Trump that Dems pretend that we have. Maybe. Yeah. It's not a bad it's not a bad observation. What on earth is that in his face? A gift from Jack Murphy. Shave that off immediately. Shave it off. Shave it. Chris Kemper says, legally, he was the biggest voice in YouTube lawyers. Glad to see him getting called out more. That's why I'm here. He gives me so much content. Crispy Legs, drop me a rant. The soldiers are required not to follow unconstitutional orders. The president can issue the orders, but those who execute those orders will not be covered under presidential immunity. Yep. It's a very important point.
Now, even if you're president and you murder your political rivals and receive protection, you'll still want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, my law firm, the Eagle Team, can help. If you've got...
Didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Apologize.
Eagle Team, you need the Eagle Team, so click below. Okay, sure. But unofficial acts are not immune, right? Well, hold on. First,
he showed this before. What's happening? Why is he taking a picture of his phone? What is happening? Why is he doing it this way? Is this a picture of his phone?
how would we distinguish a president's official actions from his unofficial one?
Well, I'll tell you this. The two examples they gave are terrible examples.
Well, the court says, quote, when the president acts pursuant to constitutional and statutory authority, he takes official action to perform the functions of his office. However, the court then says that official acts are not constrained to the president's constitutional and statutory authority. The majority says, quote, and some presidential conduct, for example, speaking to and on behalf of the American people, certainly can qualify as official conduct when not obviously connected to a particular constitutional or statutory provision.
This he's saying fast, but it's an important thing that I was surprised that they said this. Some presidential conduct, because when I saw this, I was like, I don't know, maybe now his speech at the ellipse is considered constitutional conduct. Some presidential conduct, for example, speaking to and on behalf of the American people, certainly can qualify as an official, even when not obviously connected to a particular constitutional or statutory provision. So why would his speech at the ellipse not be considered presidential conduct? How is that different from his speech at Hawaii?
For those reasons, the immunity we have recognized extends to the outer perimeter of the president's official responsibilities, covering actions so long as they are not manifestly or palpably beyond his authority.
Well, there you go. So manifestly or palpably beyond his authority is basically, snorting coke in the White House with an 8-ball, doing an 8-ball. That's manifestly not presidential.
So if you think that sounds like a very broad description of presidential official acts, you'd be right.
I do think it is. And perhaps that's a little wider than it needs to be. Frankly. I can admit, I think that's a little wider than it needs to be.
I would be challenged to come up with a broader definition.
That's fair. It's hard to come up with anything that's broader that can plausibly pass as presidential. I mean, short of saying that everything is presidential.
But surely plotting to overturn an election result would be manifestly and palpably beyond the president's authority, right?
No. Why? No. Not at all right. No, that's crazy. No. Because it's a conclusory statement. You're starting with how does he phrase this? Plotting to overturn
an
election results. What if the election result was completely corrupt? How and certainly at the time that he's doing it, there's no way to verify that it was not corrupt. Should the president just let that slide? Don't you care about democracy? Don't you want him to be standing up for democracy? Jackass.
Election result would be manifestly and palpably beyond the president's authority, right? Wrong. The Supreme Court said, quote, in dividing official from unofficial conduct, courts may not inquire into the president's motives. According to Roberts, even asking the question would cripple the executive branch's ability to function.
Yeah, it's not asking the question. It's that if you're asking the question, you're coming in there with the answer. That's the problem.
And it gets worse. According to Justice Roberts,
so mad. And it gets worse.
Quote, nor may courts deem an action unofficial merely because it allegedly violates a generally applicable law. So if a president's action violates a law, that doesn't mean he can be prosecuted.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
As Justice Jackson points out in her dissent, the government will have difficulty proving whether an act is official or unofficial since it can't introduce evidence of the president's motives. That's right, the court says you can't look to the president's motives to determine whether an act is official or unofficial either.
You created that because you always pretend that you understand his motives without knowing any facts, just based on the fact that it's Trump. And frankly, to be fair, the right does the same thing with Biden. That's why political persecutions are a problem when you're allowed to assess motives. Precisely that reason.
For reasons. The only question is whether the president has the power or not. And Justice Jackson points out the problem with this means-only or authority-only approach in her dissent in a footnote. She says, quote, to fully appreciate the oddity of making the criminal immunity determination turn on the character of the president's responsibilities, consider what the majority says is one of the president's conclusive and preclusive prerogatives, the president's power to remove those who wield executive power on his behalf. While the president may have the authority to decide to remove the attorney general, for example, the question here is whether the president has the option to remove the attorney general by, say, poisoning him to death. Put another way, the issue here is—
That's not presidential, though. See, that act is not presidential. That's just that, and God. you take like one of the stupidest footnotes and hold this up to the light as being something that is a poignant point. What a poignant point. This is such a stupid, moronic, idiotic, foolish, ridiculous point. Because the whole point, just because he has the exclusive power to remove him, that doesn't mean that he has the right to murder. It doesn't mean that whatever means he used to remove someone, which is it's palpably not presidential powers. It wouldn't be, it's not that you're removing him. It's that you're just randomly killing someone, which would be an unofficial act. You wouldn't even be looking to see what was his motivation, was because he wanted to get rid of him from the attorney general. In fact, if anyone tries saying that that's why he did it, you'd be like, no, that can't be why he did it. Because if he won't do that, he could just snap his fingers and fire him. It's such a stupid footnote. This is exactly the sort. It's so aggravating because the left sees stupidity that their leaders say and hold this stupidity up because they don't critically analyze and think through what are you actually saying here? How would that actually translate? So they don't sit there thinking it through, and instead they see something which is patently stupid, makes no sense at all. Think through for a second here, okay? Imagine that President Trump got furious at Bill Barr and poisoned him. Would anyone say, oh, he was removing him from his job? Or would they say he committed murder? There's video of him pouring a vial in and he'd be charged with murder because that's an unofficial act. And it wouldn't get all of a sudden now protection because it happens to also be removing him from the office of being attorney general. That's a joke. And if he defended by saying, well, I was just trying to remove him from being the office of attorney general, hence I have immunity, we would say, ha, that cannot be, because if you just wanted to remove him, you would have snapped your fingers and fired the dude. So this makes no sense at all. And it's not part of the main decision. It's just a stinking footnote in one of the dissents that's written by only one justice. And you're heralding this for your stupid audience, your stupid 1.7 morons who think that you actually are sharing profound perspectives on legal decisions as something that this is a poignant point made by Justice Jackson when it was the most moronic claim in the world. That if you think it through, like if a ninth grader thought this through for 3 minutes, would realize how stupid this entire paragraph is. And you're holding this up to your audience, which obviously does not gauge in critical analysis, to say, "Oh, wow, that's crazy. He's allowed to poison anyone in his cabinet." He can SEAL Team 6, the Attorney General.
Is not whether the president has exclusive removal power, but whether a generally applicable criminal law prohibiting murder can restrict how the president exercises that authority. And the implied answer in that footnote is that the president is free to poison any member of their staff or cabinet.
Whee! That's what's going to happen now. He's going to be poisoning people. That's what he has the power to do. Yeah, you try that. You try that, President Eagle. Let's see how that works out for you. So dumb. It's so dumb. This is what I'm saying. This is like when I was talking about that guy, Evan Trennis, that I'm just like, this is so bad. And so many people are following along like, wow, this is great. Wow, this is great. And I'm looking, I'm like, am I surrounded by just like incompetence here? Do you not hear how stupid this is? How asinine, like, to even have the thought that after it comes out of your, this is the sort of words that if the sentence came out of my mouth, as soon as it would leave my mouth, I'd be like, wow, that was really stupid. Okay, I take that back. Forget what I just said. And he put it in his video for eternity here. I mean, now it's for eternity because it's in my video now. Even if you bring it down, God, So dumb. So dumb. And by the way, I'm proud to be, as I've said, the first vice president, first black woman to serve with a black president. I've never watched anything by this dude. Who is this legal weasel? This is Legal Eagle. The 3.2, I thought it was 1.7, 3.2 million subs. The largest channel of any individual explaining law on YouTube. 3.2 million subs. That's who it is. Speaking of subs, while we're on that topic, what we got? Channel analytics. Oh my God! When did that happen? What's happening here? I've gone up by like 145 subs in the last 2 days. I don't know how this happened. This doesn't happen normally. It's all uncivil law. God bless uncivil law. The guy invested $100 as a birthday gift to me in advertising for me on YouTube. And voila, 140 subs. When normally I should be losing 20 a day. So that's like almost giving me like 200 subs practically. Wow. God bless. God bless. Unbelievable. Marching toward 100,000. 99 loft balloons floating in the summer sky. Panic. It's red alert. By the way, the most important takeaway from Biden's fiery post-debate speech is we're now able to fight dementia with a treatment that rhymes with schmeth. Yes, indeed. As a combat vet, the SEAL Team 6 defense is as ridiculous as the Chewbacca defense. Us following orders hasn't worked as a defense since World War II. Yep. Hey, new member of the following. Welcome aboard, Darkborn. Welcome aboard. You are now a follower. You might be new. You might not realize. You say you're a follower. You say, wait, who's the leader? Is this guy who's like screaming at Legal Eagle? Is that? Nope. I'm Joe. Joe is not the leader of the following. Say it with me. Joe is not the leader of the following. Following is really, it's a gathering of like-minded individuals seeking greater personal growth through community unity and leadership training. And it's not at all a cult type of cult. So welcome aboard. Kool-Aid Kid number 6 says, I worry the court's 3 categories of police power would become like 3 trimesters of Roe. Makes sense, not the Constitution, though in my honest opinion, impeachment is the only remedy to punish POTUS. There you go. 99.1. 99 loft balloon. There you go. We're going. Legally will definitely get on his knees for Big Mike. He sleeps beneath that Mother's Day photo AJ retweeted. Really? That's funny. 3.2 million subs. Yates Sahara at work, but as quick as they rise, they fall. God should make your strong roots outlast his branches. Pure K. Elvis reference. Oh, I know what that means. Actions rather than knowledge. Pure K. Elvis is part of Jewish tractate. Originally, the original writings of Jewish oral law called Mishnah. The parts of Mishnah that I reference here most frequently come from a section called Pirkei Avos. So, and I will frequently share with you what I will refer to as ancient Jewish thought, and it'll be something from Pirkei Avos. So, a lot of little wisdom things that people don't know where it comes from. Like true wealth is contentment with what you have. So they all come from Pirkei Avos, which goes back like 1,700 years, maybe 2,000 years. Where are we at? Okay.
Because they have authority to remove that person. They've got the power, so any means whatsoever would be an official act.
Nope, that's not true. That's not true at all. It's the stupidest interpretation. It's a bad faith argument.
And I'm not being histrionic here.
Oh, you are. You're being very histrionic, like crazy histrionic, like irrationally histrionic. This is how 10th grade. This is how a 10th grade softball team would argue.
Justice Sotomayor says the majority allows the president to send SEAL Team 6 to kill their political rival.
Nope. I mean, she says that, but it's a ridiculous read on her part. It's ridiculous.
Justice Jackson says the majority allows the president to poison any member of their staff.
And that was stupid too. But you brought that up for your 3.2 million followers to see.
This isn't just me. These are the...
Yeah, you're surrounded by crazy, shrieking harpies. That's what it is. You're surrounded by craziness, and you're swallowing it. Like on your knees, swallowing it, saying, thank you. Like a complete and total mind bitch.
Dissenting justices on the Supreme Court. This is what I meant.
Yeah. And this is why so many of us on the right look at them as if they are Supreme Court justices. Can't deny the Supreme Court justices. That's true.
When I said this was bad. And this policy argument on which they 100% rely stems from the idea of separation of powers. But it also turns that idea completely on its head.
Does it? Does it really, though? Only if your histrionics have any sort of validity in logic and rationale, which doesn't.
Because part of separation of powers is checks and balances. And here, they've organized things in a way that the executive is completely unchecked.
They've got guns! They're gonna kill us all! The executive is gonna kill us all! He has the right to use guns!
By either of the other branches of government. And while the majority opinion is 43 pages long, it never got around to defining unofficial acts.
It's hard to know what they are. There's probably a long list I can give you. You know what an unofficial act would be? Meth, cocaine, acid, prostitutes, anything related to, like, you know, pizza, cheese pizza. Those would be unofficial acts. Stuff like that.
So while it provides tons of guidance on what is an official act and is therefore immune from prosecution, they give zero guidance whatsoever on what is an unofficial act and therefore would be prosecutable.
Because it's not supposed to be used the way you guys have been using it. Yeah, it would be appropriate if they're engaging in murder. That would be appropriate to say that's an unofficial act. That's an unofficial act. That doesn't become official simply because the means that you're engaging in it.
All we know is that official acts which are immune are anything within the outer perimeter of the president's official responsibilities, covering actions so long as they are not manifestly or palpably beyond his authority.
Simply saying that he can't be charged for how he uses the military does not mean that he can say, I am going to use the military to march guns a-blazing through an elementary school that my political rivals happen to be sending their kids to. And now I'm using the military. Because I'm using the military, I'm completely immune. See, I don't really see it that way. There has to be like some sort of objective that's related to some of your duties. There has to be some sort of objective that's related to your duties. Because the idea is we want him to be able to carry out presidential objectives. So just because the means that he would be employing, the same way it would be unlawful for him to pick up a machine gun and go into a school and start shooting up a school. God forbid anyone would ever do such a thing. It does not become lawful because he has his military do it for him. And this is where This is where mental midgets like Legal Eagle get confused. Like, seemingly some justices got confused. The point is that if his objectives are to carry out presidential functions, not the means that he's employing are things that are uniquely his power. And that's why the SEAL Team 6 question is stupid. Because the same way President Trump individually has zero authority to go into Congress and start shooting off at one side of the aisle, that's his political enemy, that does not now suddenly get the sanctions and conferment of presidential immunity if instead of him doing it, he convinces a member of the military to do it for him. It doesn't all of a sudden now make it okay. The point is, if he's engaging in activities that have a presidential objective, you cannot question him. And I think a lot of people got lost here. And frankly, the Supreme Court majority didn't do a good enough job probably in their decision walking that through. But if you actually read through the logic behind what the Supreme Court wrote, that is the soundest way to understand the immunity that they confer on the presidency. But it's not like something that's an illegal act becomes legal and immunized simply because he uses a method that is allowed uniquely to the president. And I think that makes sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And that way, we can't have political enemies just saying, I don't like you, so I'm going to prosecute you for what you did here. You know, it'd be a good exercise, be a fun exercise, to go through with a red line, each of the indictment charges and see, okay, what's definitely out, what might still be in. I think that'd be a fun exercise. I like to do that on locals, I think. That'd be a fun exercise. See, okay, if I was sitting as a judge and say, where would I categorize A, B, C? Core function, not core function, but official act or unofficial act, and go allegation by allegation by allegation by allegation, and see which allegations I would draw a red line through and which ones I would put a green line through for saying this can go either way, and a yellow line through saying this is definitely going to stay. And then we could start to figure out what charges may still be remaining. I think that's a productive use of my time. Maybe I should do a standalone vid. Should I do it that way? Maybe. That's a pretty good idea. The really long ones are very long. I think that can be really interesting. Lastly, Yahoo says, if Biden himself declared Trump a terrorist and shot him in broad daylight, do you think criminal prosecution would be the most pressing matter, or would we be in civil war? Thoughts and vacuums? Yeah, but it's also, my point is, it's so stupid. It's such a stupid question. Who's going to tell the left that the original plan B to a tyrant executive branch unchecked by the Supreme Court or Congress is the Second Amendment? It's true. It's true. That's why we have a Second Amendment. Next biggest loss planner as Asmongold at 2.63. Legally, it reminds me of a trained chimp. I've heard Avos is called such because it's the most important Masechta, meaning most important tractate. Intent in act is fundamental to spirituality. Mitzvos, tzrichas, kavanas, yivamas, 4 ways. Yep. He's quoting Talmud now. Even more now because as a felon, Trump can't even own a gun. He's not a felon yet. He's only a felon once he's sentenced. He's not a felon. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think he's ever going to be a felon. I question whether he will ever be a felon. Does Just Mirror's Legal Eagle look like a used car salesman? I think I get the same vibe from him also. Cars Depp says, do you see Trump's July 4th message where he mentioned Kamala's political head start with Willie Brown? I missed that. Maybe someone could send me that in a DM on Twitter. You for Trump, Nate for Bragg, and uncivil as the judge go through the indictment. You for Trump, Nate for Bragg, uncivil as the judge go through the indictment. It'd probably be a long stream. Could be fun, though. Transforming the political process of impeachment into a necessary step in the enforcement of criminal law finds little support in the text of the Constitution or the structure of the nation's government. Oh, I just realized I forgot to put something in my details. I need to put a hashtag. I don't know if I'm going to get to this speech. Hashtag Alec Baldwin. Hashtag. I got to remind YouTube that I plan on covering the Baldwin trial, which is starting on Tuesday. And if I keep tagging and referencing that and people come and look at my video and give likes and thumbs up, then when I start streaming the trial, I get a head start. So I'm sharing with you all, Baldwin trial starts Tuesday. I will be live streaming it. I urge you to join me here. Join me here. So that's why you'll even see hashtag Alec Baldwin, hashtag Baldwin trial down below, which I plan on incorporating in every video I do probably for the next 2 weeks. But yeah, so what were you saying here? Transform the political process of impeachment into a necessary step in the enforcement of criminal law. Finds little support in text constitutional structure of the nation's government. They didn't say that it is necessary. They didn't say that. They did not say that it isn't necessary. That's actually one of the things that a lot of people thought they would say, and they did not say. But I would argue that if he were impeached, these rules about immunity would go out the window. If there was a conviction and impeachment, I think that this would go out the window because it's expressed in the Constitution that you can go after him criminally if he's prosecuted, if he's convicted of impeachment. So I think all of this is in a situation where there is no conviction of impeachment. But the Supreme Court agrees with your reading right here. Terrace says, Eagle should tell us if cigars and interns are official or dime bags. Yeah, you see, that's not official. It's not official act. They're dime bags. I think he's colluding with the Russians to make 3.2 million people stupid. That's possible. He's colluding with the Russians to make Americans stupid. Let's go back to work.
That's almost anything a president does.
No, what about cigars and interns?
So the court has also made the official versus unofficial distinction almost meaningless. As Justice Sotomayor says, in fact, the majority's dividing line between official and unofficial conduct narrows the conduct considered unofficial almost to a nullity.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not at all a nullity. It's just not the stuff that, presidents do. It's sort of like, what's unofficial act? Stuff that we wouldn't want our presidents to be doing. I mean, look, I guess a personal thing that he's doing, like, he's taking his kids to school.
It says that whenever the president acts in a way that is not manifestly palpably beyond his authority, he's taking official action. And
I think that's how the Supreme Court is wording it. I think that's how they're reading it. Yeah, it's like, when he's snorting coke, that's not a presidential thing. That's not manifestly or palpably. That's manifestly and palpably beyond his authority.
Goes a step further. In dividing official from unofficial conduct, courts may not inquire into the president's motives. It is one thing to say that motive is irrelevant to questions regarding the scope of civil liability, but it is quite another to make it irrelevant to questions regarding criminal liability.
By the way, if you're in law school and you're redlining, highlighting to this degree that every line, it's almost like, why you bother highlighting at a certain point? Why are you highlighting? Because now you're going to remember it better? Is it to show how much you read and how much you didn't read yet? Why are you highlighting every line? Doesn't even make sense. This is an act of outrage. There's so many tells in this video that he's just losing it.
Under that rule, any use of official power for any purpose, even the most corrupt purpose indicated by objective evidence of the most corrupt motives and intent, remains official and immune. Under the majority's test,
every line is highlighted.
If it can be called a test, the category of presidential action that can be deemed unofficial is destined to be vanishingly small. So to help understand all of these distinctions,
which, yeah, you just read through a whole bunch of stuff that none of your listeners know what the hell you just said.
The great people over at Justice Security put together this great chart, starting from right to...
This is the third time he's bringing this chart up. I don't know who edited this video. This is the third time he brought up the same chart on a phone. I don't know what's happening here. This seems, frankly, the one thing that he's really good at in general, as a general rule, is his video editing.
The left, if there is official conduct, we have to ask, is it within the core constitutional authority? If it is, there's absolute immunity, no prosecution, and you can't use it as evidence. If it's not core constitutional authority, you have to ask, does it pose any danger of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch? If it does, no prosecution, can't use it as evidence. If it doesn't pose any dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch, then there is no immunity and you can use it as evidence in a prosecution. Then going back up to the top of the chart.
It's just like reading to us. Do I sound like this? Do I do this? I'm starting to wonder, like, what is the point? What is the point? You need to explain it to your audience, what you're talking about here.
If the conduct is 100% unofficial, then yes, you can prosecute it. But remember, you cannot use any official acts or anything that was deemed an official act as evidence in that particular trial. Now, when courts address constitutional questions, they're generally bound by principles of judicial restraint. Now, the consequences of this decision are not just about Trump. It applies to all presidents for the...
I wonder if he's going to get to Thomas's concurrence. Because Thomas's concurrence is, in case you missed my coverage of it when the decision came out, his concurrence made me laugh because he really went outside what the whole issue presented was. And he was like, P.S. Jack Smith has no business prosecuting any of these cases.
Foreseeable future. And that's why it's important to understand the criticisms of this decision and why it's so dangerous. So let's start with one of the court's first big leaps, the idea that immunity shields a president from criminal as well as civil penalties. Why did the majority grant such sweeping immunity? Well, according to the majority, quote, the purpose of a vigorous and energetic executive, the framers thought, was to ensure good government, for a feeble executive implies a feeble execution of the government. They pull that line out of context from Federalist 70, and that's about it. You apparently can't...
What do you mean out of context? In what way is that out of context? Okay. I told you I was going to share with you the best Trump story. Now is the time. They talk about vigorous and energetic executive versus feeble executive, which was on display a week ago during the debate. I need to share with you the greatest story. Where is it? I've been saving this for days. This is it. I'm going to share with you the greatest Trump story you've ever heard. Okay? I am now I never do this. Okay? I'm at an hour 48 into this video. And I'm going to bookmark to this point here, right here. And I'm going to share with you now the greatest story I have ever heard about any president ever. I don't care. Don't give me 7 years ago. Don't give me your Washington chopping down a cherry tree. I don't even care about him crossing crossing the Potomac. I don't care. The greatest presidential story I've ever heard. And nobody heard this story about Trump. I can't even believe that this is a commercial. Like, oh my freaking Lord. Who the hell would not want this man to be president? Who would not? I'm going to share this story. Watch this story and tell me you don't want this guy to be your president's daddy. Check this out.
This is my number one favorite of all time. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Unbelievable. It's like you have to watch that story again. You're just like, oh my God. I'm going to share this in Locals. I'll share a link to this over in Locals. Unbelievable. Sitting with terrorists, the head of a terrorist organization, Taliban, crazy, radical, most bizarrely radical, like lunatics in the world, and says to them, we're going to have a conditional release. You harm a single American, I will kill you. And just hands him a satellite photo of the guy's house and walks out. I'm done. I've said everything I had to say. Tell me that is not the president you wish we could always have. That's how every president should be. Now imagine the whole repeat Medicare guy negotiating with hostile and enemy adversaries. Unbelievable. Most badass story ever. Such a freaking boss move. Unbelievable. How that's the commercial. That's it. Boom. That's it. Do you want that to be your president or not? Is that what you want as your president or not? That should be running everywhere. Everywhere. This guy telling that story. This guy telling that story. That's your perfect commercial. That's your perfect commercial. Because that's what we all are hoping for from a president. That should be every commercial everywhere. Every person should know this story by heart. Such a great, told you it's the greatest story. Tell me of a story about a president that's more impressive than that. You're going to have a hard time with it. That a sitting president does that. That's what you want from a leader. That's genuine leadership. You think President Kamala Harris could ever do that? Unbelievable. Such a great story. I'm sorry. While I'm streaming, I'm actually there's developments in my family that I'm trying to keep track of. Which all good, hopefully, God willing. Can't really discuss any further. But that's why I'm a little distracted. Eagle should tell us the cigars we got. This one, Biden should be happy he can't be charged with what's happening to our women and children out of the hands of his newcomers or any of the other failures. Yeah, he should be. He should be. Founders didn't say a former president had to be impeached while he was sitting president before criminal prosecution is available. The less alarmism is a disingenuous canard. Well, some people I interpreted it that way. I interpreted the impeachment clause that way. The Supreme Court disagreed with me. The Supreme Court said you can go after him for unofficial acts. But I think for official acts, the point that I'm making is I think for official acts, the protections that came out in U.S. v. Trump this week of presidential immunity, I think that those would all wash away in a scenario that there was a conviction of the impeachment. Is legal either this dumb or is he trying to fool his subs? I think he believes it. I think this is what all the people, the leftists on the other side of the aisle genuinely believe. The story is, my God, point before you get respect, you need fear, peace through strength. That's what actual peace through strength is, as opposed to Nikki Haley, who is like, peace through strength means I'm going to blow everybody up. Because he didn't have to kill anyone. He just told them, you will die. You will die. Don't do it. You will die. Biden would hand them a picture. Probably. Oh, that's my Aunt Shirley. Ultimate example of the art of the deal. It is. It's phenomenal. It's so badass. If you spill a drop of our blood, we'll spill a gallon of yours. When Trump ad today, look it up. That story. It's great because it's not him talking. It's someone who watched him in action talking about what he saw Trump do as president. I mean, and it doesn't hurt the fact that the guy's black as far as airing that as a commercial. That is such a phenomenal commercial for Trump. You guys, now you're whining about mean tweets. So he sends mean tweets also. Okay. I don't care. I don't care at all. That story. It's perfect. How can I give the membership to one particular person? I don't know that it can be done. It's a good question. I don't think it can be done. That's beyond the capacity of YouTube, at least in its current format. Happy 4th. Thank you for all your hard work. My pleasure. Sun Wukong. They believed it because he's willing to do it. Yeah. You're saying that the Taliban believed it. Yeah. No Americans were harmed for 18 months afterwards. Yeah. Wait a minute, let's get back into this. I don't know that I'm going to get to the speech. I'm already 2 hours in. I didn't expect this to take me nearly this long. I want to credit Joe for like calling my attention to this Legal Eagle video, because as soon as I saw it, I don't think I'm going to get to the speech. I'll tell you, because the speech is 40 minutes. I'm not doing the speech. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to take that out of the description, because I'm not going to get to the speech. I will tell you, I'll share it at a Trump rally. But the speech I wanted to share with you, I was planning on sharing with you all, is the greatest Trump speech that I recall hearing. And I obviously haven't heard it in a while. And I'm wondering if when I hear it a second time, I'm still going to like it as much, or I like it as much, less, more than I did when I heard it the first time. But I'd be curious what your thoughts are as to like the greatest Trump speech you heard. Oh, it was such a great speech. What would it cost to get you there? What, in advertising? I don't know. I don't know how much I'm getting out of this. I'm assuming it was the $100 he spent. They got me 200 subs, but that Lawgic $500 in advertising would get me there. I don't know. Maybe his is going to push me further. Maybe it's less than that. Who knows? I've never spent a dime on advertising myself. I don't know if that's a mark of pride or a mark of stupidity. I don't know if that's something I should be proud of or something that I should be embarrassed by. But let's go forward.
They pull that line out of context from Federalist 70, and that's about it. You apparently can't have any enfeeblement whatsoever of the president, even though every president for the last 250 years has assumed they could be criminally liable for at least some of their conduct.
Zero evidence that that's true.
But that's it. That's all the support they have. It's just a policy argument that a vigorous, unencumbered presidency is good, therefore almost full immunity. QED, from proclaimed originalist and textualist, This is honestly shockingly dishonest and hypocritical. Because we're dealing with the Constitution, Congress can't pass a law that says the president will be criminally liable for virtually anything, and the judiciary can't prosecute the president. So the president is unchecked. And the majority opinion doesn't even address the public's interest in not having a criminal president. As Justice Sotomayor points out in her dissent, the court's precedent suggests that presidents do not and should not have broad immunity from criminal law.
Really?
Quote, at the same time, the public interest in federal criminal prosecution of a former president is vastly greater than the public interest in a private individual's civil suit.
Why?
All 9 justices in Fitzgerald explicitly recognized that distinction. The 5-justice majority noted that there was a greater public interest in criminal prosecutions than in actions for civil damages. Chief Justice Berger's concurrence accordingly emphasized that the majority's immunity was limited to civil damages claims rather than criminal prosecution. The 4 dissenting justices agreed that a contention that the president is immune from criminal prosecution in the courts, if ever made, would not be credible. And
one more time. Chief Justice Berger's concurrence emphasized that the majority's immunity was limited to civil. 4 dissenting justices agreed that contention that the president is immune from criminal prosecution in the courts, if ever made, would not be credible. That's in the dissent. That's what the dissent says. You're quoting that as what the 4 dissenting justices. So that they're the dissent. That's the dissent. Who cares?
the president is immune from criminal prosecution in the courts, if ever made, would not be credible. And the ramifications of declaring the president above criminal law are huge. Justice Jackson explains, quote, put simply, immunity is exemption from the duties and liabilities imposed by law.
Now he's at least spacing it out a little bit. That's how you're supposed to highlight.
Purest form, the concept of immunity boils down to a maxim, the king can do no wrong, a notion that was firmly rejected at the birth of our republic. And as
it's not at its purest form, because he can do wrong if it's in his personal, if it's personal act.
Justice Sotomayor explains, quote, the majority makes 3 moves that, in effect, completely insulate presidents from criminal liability. First, the majority creates absolute immunity for the president's exercise of core constitutional powers. This holding is unnecessary on the facts of the indictment, and the majority's attempt to apply it to the facts expands the concept of core powers beyond any recognizable bounds. In any event, it is quickly eclipsed by the second move, which is to create expansive immunity for all official acts. Whether described as presumptive or absolute under the majority's rule, a president's use of any official power for any purpose, even the most corrupt, is immune from prosecution. That is just as bad as it sounds, and it is baseless. Finally, the majority declares that evidence concerning acts...
It's not baseless if you consider, if your yardstick is not the means of employment, but the objectives of fulfilling the presidential duties. Those are 2 different things.
...for which the president is immune, can play no role in any criminal prosecution against him. That holding, which will prevent the government from using a president's official acts to prove knowledge or intent in prosecuting private offenses, is nonsensical. Argument by argument, the majority invents immunity through...
Ironically, the left's interpretation of this decision, their interpretation, this guy's interpretation, and Sotomayor's interpretation of this decision means that when Donald Trump said, I could shoot someone in the face in Broadway and get away with it, was true. Fact check, true. Don't let your memes be dreams. Oh, what would it cost to get me there? You mean to do the speech? It's a 42-minute speech, which if I'm doing it, it's going to take me like an hour and a half. Are you kidding me? An hour and a half? An hour and a half of time? I thought this was going to take me like 20 minutes. An hour and a half of time? At 2 o'clock in the morning? I'd be asking you for like $1,000 for that. Yeah, I was listening to an ass instead of Donald J. Trump on July 4th. That was the reason I was going to do it. But this is way more fun. I mean, gosh, now you make me feel bad. Now you're making me feel bad. Now you're making me feel bad.
brute force. Under scrutiny, its arguments crumble. To start, the majority's broad official acts immunity is inconsistent with text, history, and established understandings of the president's role. Moreover, it is deeply wrong even in its own functionalist terms. Next, the majority's core immunity is both unnecessary and misguided. Furthermore, the majority's illogical evidentiary hearings is unprecedented. Finally, this majority's project will have disastrous consequences for the presidency and for our democracy.
No,
the main takeaway of today's decision is that all of a president's
quite the
official acts
opposite. This is what insulates us and maintains the constitutional republic, because now we're not going to have this tit for tat persecutive prosecutions
without regard to motive or intent are entitled to immunity that is at least presumptive and quite possibly absolute. Whenever the president wields the enormous
Every
power of his
sentence
office
is being highlighted here. Every freak. He's so angry.
The majority says the criminal law, at least presumptively, cannot touch him. The official acts immunity has no firm grounding in constitutional text, history, or precedent. Indeed, those standard grounds for constitutional decision-making all point in the opposite direction. No matter how you look at it, the majority's official acts immunity is utterly indefensible. Now, the 6 conservatives in the majority, all of them self-described strict acts immunity, is utterly...
Look at how they highlight here. This official acts immunity has, quote, no firm ground in constitutional text, history, or precedent, citing Dobbs v. Jackson. You dissented from Dobbs v. Jackson. Oh my God! The case I dissent from is what I'm gonna throw back at you. God, unbelievable.
Indefensible. Now, the 6 conservatives in the majority, all of them self-described strict textualists, were really offended by this comment. They say that, quote, a specific textual basis has not been considered a prerequisite to the recognition of immunity. And Justice Roberts tries to rebut Sotomayor by noting that the Constitution is silent on all matters related to prosecuting ex-presidents. Quote, conspicuously absent is the mention of the fact that since the founding, no president has ever faced criminal charges, let alone for his conduct in office. But that's entirely Sotomayor's point. She says the Constitution's silence is noteworthy in at least 3 respects. Quote, first, the framers clearly knew how to provide for immunity from prosecution.
How many lines do you think he's in a row? Do you think he's going to highlight now? Because he said 3. Is he going to go all the way through his first and then second paragraph and the third?
Because they did give narrow immunity to legislators via the speech or debate clause. She says, quote, they did not extend the same or similar immunity to presidents. This is classic textual interpretation. If you're bound by the Constitution and the Constitution grants immunity in some places, but is silent as to immunity in other places, that immunity doesn't exist. Her second point is that some state constitutions did provide express immunity for sitting governors, but the Constitution did not. Again, calling into question the reason the framers did not extend that privilege to a sitting president. And the third contention was that the impeachment judgment clause cut against the court's position. Quote, that clause presumes the availability of criminal process as a backstop by establishing that an official impeached and convicted by the Senate shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, and judgment and punishment according to law. That clause clearly contemplates that a former president may be subject to criminal prosecution for the same conduct that resulted or could have resulted in an impeachment judgment, including conduct such as bribery.
No,
so
just the opposite. That clause says just the opposite. That clause presumes availability of criminal process as a backstop by establishing an official. This is the impeachment clause. Impeached and convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment. It clearly contemplates that a former president may be subject if he's impeached.
Or could have resulted in an impeachment judgment, including conduct such as bribery. So there's no other way to put this. This is a horrifying opinion.
Oh, it's a delicious opinion. It's the right opinion.
And I personally worry about the future of this country.
I worry about the future of the country that would not give the president immunity.
For one reason, we can't change this. There's no one to appeal to. Congress.
That's true.
Congress can't fix this with legislation.
Oh my gosh, what are we going to do now?
We can't appeal to the courts because the highest court in the land says that the immunity exists and it's almost always absolute. The Constitution is the highest law of the land, and it's effectively like the Supreme Court has amended the Constitution to include an...
It's always been this way. Why do you think no one's ever been prosecuted?
Immunity that has never existed before with zero basis in the text and history of the Constitution. All we can do is hope that future presidents won't use this power. This is horrifying not only for those that think former President Trump committed crimes while in office, but for anyone that believes...
Wait, since you think he committed crimes, that means he's guilty of crimes? You know what he didn't get to here? That Trump brought an application to set aside the 34 convictions based on the fact that The Supreme Court this week just said that before you can go after a president, you have to establish whether or not the acts are official or unofficial. And Judge Merchan never did that. And accordingly, this has to be the decision of the jury has to be set aside. I don't know if he's going to get there. He's only got 3 minutes left, 2.5 minutes left. I don't know he's going to get there.
Believes the president should be bound by the law. As of today, for many, many actions, regardless of their inherent criminality, the president is immune. And even if you believed every crazy thing that has been alleged about Biden and the Biden crime family, this decision would immunize almost every allegation that has been levied against them.
Nope. Most of his allegations precede his time in office.
And of course, the shadow of Trump's actions looms large, but I wouldn't want this opinion to come down during any presidency.
You should want it to come down during any presidency. That's exactly the point. Gosh. He wouldn't look more like a clown if he had the fuzzy green hair and a bright red nose.
Nor does any serious jurist think that this should be the law going forward.
Quite the contrary. Anyone who's serious, everyone who's serious thinks this must be the law.
No president should have this immunity. No president should have this power.
Oh my God. So dumb. I would love to debate him on this.
And perhaps someday the Supreme Court will scale back this opinion and provide reasonable definitions. But as it stands now, current and future presidents have the powers of a king.
Not quite. Not quite. The king would be able to get away with personal acts as well.
So yeah, this is bad, and I frankly can't think of anything worse.
I can think of something worse. Something worse would be if the dissent actually wrote the opinion. That would be much, much worse. Much worse. Much. The entire country would be in disarray. Everyone would be prosecuted after they left office. Everyone.
And that's also reflected in the news reporting as well. What's interesting is that the Supreme Court decision has been covered extensively by over 400 news outlets, 33% of the reporting coming from the left, and
he's hired by Ground News.
Only 17% coming from the right. But if you compare the headlines, you'll start to see some interesting framing emerge. On the left, you have a lot of outlets saying that Trump was granted immunity. On the right, outlets tend to draw the distinction between official acts and private acts. And depending on which article you see first, your view of the story can be completely different. If you read the left-leaning sources first, you might think that presidents have complete immunity and only focus on the potential negative outcomes, which frankly is more accurate.
Nope, not at all.
Wrong. And if you read the ones on the right, you might fail to see any of the potential repercussions from
we see the repercussions of not giving immunity, jackass. That's what you see.
This decision. Now, all this is possible thanks to today's sponsor, Ground News, a website and app developed by...
There you go, Ground News. So, there you go. People hate when I talk to Pisco. I should get Destiny on here. Let's try and get him on here for a debate about this. Problem is he's not a lawyer. People hate when I bring Pisco in here. They hate it. Some people are like, I'm never watching with him because they feel like he gaslights in his arguments. Maybe I'll invite Tira on. Maybe I'll introduce you all to Tira. She's a leftist lawyer who I argue with a lot in spaces. And I personally find her to at least attempt to be rational, which makes her for more engaging sport. Like she recognizes some flaws sometimes in arguments. But I don't know if you guys are going to like her any more than Pisco. That's why I read the decision, not a story about it. Yep. All right. I still haven't gotten any news here. I don't know what the story is. All right. Well, I need to mute you for a second because this is probably the story. It's a boy. That's right. That's right. I'm a grandpa yet again. Thank you very much. It's a boy. My oldest daughter, God bless her, and my awesome son-in-law, one of two awesome sons-in-law that I have. 4 kids, 4 boys. Baruch Hashem. Means thank God. So there you go. I'm a Zayda. Yet again. Yet again. I'm going to raise a glass. Oh, man. This is what I kept peeking my phone. We don't talk about when a family member is in labor, we don't talk about it. It's like bad luck, whatever. We just don't discuss it. It's the only people who know are basically like real immediate family. Like I wouldn't even tell her siblings that she was in labor. But apparently, roughly 15 minutes ago or so, my oldest daughter had a baby boy. To you and yours, to my wife, most specifically my oldest daughter, her husband, and the newborn's 3 older brothers, L'chaim, life. Woo! Nice. Awesome. Whew. And I'm all charged up. I'm all charged up. I am all charged up. Oh, yeah. Very, very excited. Very, very excited. First question I asked her was, how are you? The second I asked was, how's the baby? Thank God. Answer both was, thank God, fine. And yeah. And then I was talking to them about where they're going to spend Shabbos because she's going to be in the hospital. Obviously. Shabbos is tomorrow night. So you always try to make arrangements. When you have a baby boy, so Orthodox Jews have a custom that on the first Friday night after the boy is born, we have a party called a Shalom Zachar, meaning welcoming male. And yeah, so you basically invite people, set out drinks, buy lots of booze and cakes and things of that nature, and make a party. Now, normally the father is the one who makes the party. Alas, so I was asking them like where my son-in-law is going to be for Shabbos. He's going to be in the hospital with my daughter. So he's not going to be making a party. So I asked him if I should make a party. I said, if I want, and I want, I definitely want. So excited. So excited. Thank you, God. Lady Lawgic has spent like the last 4 hours in prayer. Like waiting for the phone to ring. So very, very excited. There you go. And I asked them permission. I said, can I share this on stream? Because I know you're all looking at me while I'm having this facial reaction. And then for me to not say anything be wrong, they're like, yeah, whatever. I was like, I muted it. So none of them hear anything. I don't have to, but I kind of really want to. So yeah. Anyway, thank you all for the very warm wishes. You're very kind. I'm looking at you guys here, and you're real, like, just very generous here. I appreciate it. Man. My daughter, God bless her. He's married for under 5 years and has had 4 separate deliveries. No twins in there. 4 boys. Yeah. They're a handful. His oldest brother is still 3. So now I got to figure out what's going to be with respect to where Lady Lawgic is going to be. Anyway, let's see what we got here. Janella Rella says, Pisco and Destiny are physically sick of me. I can't watch them. Yeah, a lot of people get that. Grats, Chief. Now let's do the speech. Celebrate. I don't know. I probably need to call Lady Lawgic, right? I probably should call her. I should call her, right? I mean, I'm a kind of a jerk if I don't call. Give me a minute to call her. I got to mute for like 1 minute. Yeah, that's my wife. She literally went through entire Psalms. That's my wife. She's kind of crazy. She's kind of awesome. Squisgar, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, DS. Sour Kraus. Hit me with that. Congratulations, old man. Happy for you. God is good. God is great. I agree with you 100%. Congrats, Joe. Buy a drink on me. Did you see the God Emperor's golf cart video? I love that, man. Oh, yes. I was planning on watching that with you. I will cover that. I will cover that. Why is my video looks frozen? Oh, that's good. Okay. Congrats, Joe. We got this. May your heart be warm and happy with the lilt of Irish laughter. Not much Irish blood in me, but I don't know. Maybe his side of the family. Every day and every way and forever and after. Slaint. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congrats, Joe. Amazing. Thank you so much. King of recruitment. Correct call from We Oughta Baby It's a Boy. If you know, you know. We Oughta Baby It's a Boy. That's right, Shalom Zachar. Congrats, Grandpa, your newest grandchild, grandson. Thank you so much. Your reaction gave it away. Such a great blessing. I'm okay with that. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Shalom Zachar is important. Shows newborn that Ruchnis can be had in this world. Yeah. Joe, I've quit drinking alcohol, but I'll have a cream soda in honor. Kamala stuff. Thank you so much. No, you should end the stream and go there. Yeah, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. She's in a hospital right now that is like an hour and a half drive from me. And I'll get there at 3 o'clock in the morning and she will be asleep. And her husband hopefully will be home asleep somewhere. And their kids are over by his folks' house. So, yeah. So they all need sleep. But the first question, that was before I left, I was like, is there anything I can do to help you guys? So, there you go. Jenny L, congratulations. Thank you so much. Blessings. I posted a couple pictures in the comments under the Twitter live stream. Screenshots from the show could be used for future thumbnails, possibly. Congrats on the grandchild. Under the Twitter live stream, screenshots from the show could be used for future thumbnails, possibly. Congrats on grandchild. My best to the family. Let me see what you did there. That's funny. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's really good. All right. Whew. Now I think I'm good. All right. I think it's time for me to start landing my plane here. I did want to share with you this because I thought this was funny. I'll share one last thing before I go. The left is so freaked out about this. Loading ad. Gosh. Really? This is Daily Beast. They broke this story. Come on. Let me try refreshing this. I'm getting a big circle of death here. Oh my gosh. Oh, now it's a locked article. Now that I refreshed it, you suck. Oh, you suck. What we got? Come on.
You gave me so much. How did I do with the debate the other night?
Oh, amazing.
You kicked that old broken down pile of crap.
Yeah.
So much. How did I do with the debate the other night?
Oh,
You
amazing.
kicked that old broken down pile of crap.
Yeah.
It's a bad guy. He just quit, He's quitting the race.
Is that right?
Yep, I got him out of the race. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic.
It's so amazing.
It's just so fucking bad. So
I just can't imagine.
But can you imagine that guy with dealing with Putin and the president of China, who's a fierce person? He's a fierce man, a very tough guy. And they see them, they probably he can't. But they just announced he's probably quitting.
Good. Very good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just keep knocking him out. Huh?
That's it.
There you go. Apparently, they found that to be very disrespectful. Very disrespectful. Broken down pile of crap on the verge of quitting the race. That was Donald. Summation of Joe Biden in a surreptitiously filmed video leaked on Wednesday. Ooh, big scoop. Big scoop. The clip obtained by the Daily Beast shows 78-year-old former president sitting in a golf cart holding a pile of cash and with son Barron alongside as he offers analysis of the 2024 presidential campaign. He just quit, He's quitting the race. I got him out of and that means we have Kamala. Like I said, best advertisement for him, best advertisement in the world is those two guys telling that story that I shared earlier. Such a great story. Such a great story that you're like, you want this guy as your leader, or you want feeble-minded, weakness. 13 dead Marines. 13 dead Marines. Think that would have happened if Trump was still in office? Zero chance. Zero. We have 13 dead Americans. That's completely on the ledger of the Biden administration. Zero repercussions to the Taliban. Zero, because weakness is what they are. We'll send our money. We'll send billions of euro dollars, but we're not going to actually take like any decisive action that's designed to actually benefit Americans. Terrible. But I can't hide my giddiness. I'm in a really awesome mood. And probably should call my dad. It's so funny. My father, like, I've had in the last, my father has had 3 great-grandchildren born within the last 2 weeks, because my brother had 2 grandchildren born within the last like week and a half. So for my father, he now has 3 great-grandchildren over the last 2 weeks, the entire time he's been in Israel. And what's really funny is he usually goes for the summer, and he specifically went early than he normally goes, so he'd be back for all of their births. But they all gave birth early, all 3 of them. So there you go. Anyway, that's my show. I'm wrapping up. I don't know if I'm going to be on Layback Law tomorrow. Probably not, because I'm probably going to have a bunch of things to take care of for the family and for Zachar. And they're out in Long Island. My wife's up in the Catskills. I'm like halfway in between. I don't know where I'm going to be. So I need to start making plans and figuring stuff out. I thank you all for your warm wishes and the really kind support you guys have offered me. I'm going to urge you before I get out of here. I'm now at 99,219. Pushing closer and closer and closer. Closer and closer. 99.2. We can do it. We can do it. So it's so easy. It's so easy. All right. So if you could please like, share, subscribe, drop comments, feeds the algorithm, do all that stuff. Feed the algorithm. Feed the algorithm. It has to be more than like 8 words, or I think is what they say. It's got to be 8 words minimum. So whatever you can do to feed the algorithm, get more people in so I can actually cross that threshold, I'd be most obliged. I thank you so much for joining me. I don't know if I'm going to be streaming Saturday night. It's doubtful. I will be streaming Saturday night. It's very doubtful. I'll be streaming Saturday night. But you'll hear that at goodlogic.locals.com, goodlogic.locals.com. I thank you all so much for your time, your patience, and most importantly, your attention. Have a phenomenal weekend, you all. Don't eat the bugs. Don't eat the bugs. Don't eat the bugs. Good night, my friends. And as always, cold speed. Oh, wait, I didn't check locals. Oh, thank you. Thank you, entry required. There we go. Got locals. One quick check over here. I'm good here. I'm good here. I covered everything. We're good. I said good night. I said good night. What's the matter? I said good night. I said Godspeed. Everything's good. We're covered. I'm out.